Tales of the Jedi is a 2022 Clone Wars follow-up produced by Dave Filoni that more or less functions as a spiritual successor to the comic anthology of the same name, and perhaps it functions a bit like a character setup for the upcoming Ahsoka Disney Plus series. How true is that? I don't know. The trailer looks amazing. It's really a league ahead of the other animated shows, but is it actually worth watching? Well, let's find out. Full spoilers ahead, whatever they may be. I'm going to talk about each episode in order, then we'll go back and talk about the miniseries as a whole. 2 hours later. Wow, okay, let's get started. First off, this show does not seem intended for introductory viewing. Leaving the other media out of it's not going to be easy, but I'll do my best. The premise of this episode is simple. We're going back to show the birth of Ahsoka and the discovery of her Jedi abilities. And that's it. That's the episode. At least, it's easy to break it down that way. We really take our time here with the pacing, letting you sit in this world and get an idea of the culture that Ahsoka comes from. It's a real slice-of-life moment, from the old wise woman's obvious leadership role in the village to Ahsoka's mother, Pav T, going out on a hunt with Ahsoka at the frighteningly young age of 1. Though the style is very much in line with what the Clone Wars has established, the actual visuals on display are much more rich and vibrant, everything matching the mood and illustrating a living world, as opposed to just a place. Modern shows are so often afraid to slow down and whack the flowers, especially Star Wars, and I'm here for it. Pav T takes Ahsoka on a hunt and prepares to absolutely Bambi a deer critter. She is slow and deliberate about her hunt, though when the blaster rifle goes off, it definitely sounds more like a real rifle than a blaster. A few scenes later, she fires the blaster even more and it sounds like a regular blaster. So the bang was just for the effect. Pav T attempts to impart a lesson of confronting death to young Ahsoka, and it's clear that they take their rituals of the hunt and respect to the world they live in seriously. It's all nice and rich, but now we're out of time for that as the local predator stalks in and attacks out of hunger. Pav T does a wonderful war cry and jumps in for the fight, loosing a few blaster rounds that alert the village to trouble, but she almost immediately gets separated from Ahsoka. Reinforcements arrive as the fight goes on and the predator takes off with Ahsoka after it takes a few glancing hits. In the cave, Ahsoka, seemingly unaware of the danger, uses Force Boop to connect with the creature and calm it down. It's possible she even lightly heals the creature, but that's not made completely clear. One scene later, the predator comes back to the village with Ahsoka on its back and reunites her with her family. Everyone is baffled, but the old lady knows what's up. Ahsoka has what it takes to be a Jedi. Music plays, Ahsoka falls asleep, episode ends. Good stuff. It's simple and slow, but engaging. Of these 6 episodes, this is the only one I would probably skip. We already know that Force-sensitive children exist and are taken in by the Jedi at an early age, and while it's cool to see it play out for a character like this, that's it. It's just kinda cool. This episode would roughly take place around the events of the Phantom Menace movie, but it's not the earliest in the timeline that we will see. Fine episode, but I know what's coming next. There's something to be said for the marketing here. Featuring Ahsoka so heavily only for the real purpose of this series to give us some much needed love for Dooku, it's brilliant. Young Jedi Dooku and his Padawan Qui-Gon, spoilers, touch down on a Republic planet in obvious ruins, ravaged and forgotten. Like the previous episode, before we get into the plot proper, we're given time to take in the environment. It's a very un-Star Warsy ramshackle town, something right out of a fantasy novel. People hide away as the Jedi approach, everyone is standoffish. The Jedi enter a sort of tavern and immediately ask, where is the child?
Where are they holding the senator's son?
The villagers don't answer the question right away and explain that they hold the senator responsible for the state of their world. The woman they are speaking with reveals herself to be one of the kidnappers.
You're one of the kidnappers.
They all are.
Chilling line delivery. Oh, I loved the late Christopher Lee, and no shade on this voice actor, but this take on Dooku sounds like a good Alan Rickman impersonation, and to be honest, that kind of works for me, so kudos all around. The Jedi are taken to the senator's son, who reveals that he is in good condition. Moreover, he is appalled by his father's actions and finds himself siding with his kidnappers. The senator then arrives in force moments later, taking matters into his own hands. He is surprised to find 2 Jedi in his way, and more surprised when he finds the Jedi are suddenly less than cooperative. A standoff ensues, and it's clear that Dooku's conscience will not abide the mistreatment of the people here. Lightsabers ignite, and the battle begins. The townspeople are downed very quickly, one after the next, by the Senator's superior forces. They're absolutely no match for the Republic soldiers. Witnessing the suffering all around him, Dooku snaps and moves to end the conflict decidedly. He holds the senator in a forced choke and pushes Qui-Gon away. Qui-Gon quickly releases the senator's son and instructs him to save his father, seeing the deadly intent in his master's face. Dooku is stopped just before the killing blow, and the son leaves with his shameful father. Despite the day being saved this time, the people are still suffering, and truly have little reason to think that things will change long term, even as the Republic soldiers help them rebuild for now. Dooku and Qui-Gon exchange a few words in reflection, and the episode comes to a close. Absolutely fantastic. So few words are spoken, but everything is laid out so plainly and clearly. You can feel the inkling pain in Dooku's soul as he sees the very Republic he serves causing so much pain and suffering, and you get a sense that he feels helpless to effect change if things keep going on the way they are. It is interesting to me that Dooku used a dark-sided power such as Force Choke in front of Qui-Gon, but it's important to remember that at this moment in history, the Sith are thought to be gone, and it's unlikely Qui-Gon would be familiar with the dark side too much at this point. Hard to say really, but he's clearly unperturbed by his master's actions. But that's not the end of the story for the idealist young Dooku. Several years after the previous episode, Mace Windu and Dooku open up on an investigation of a recently murdered Jedi. While their orders are simply to retrieve the body, Dooku insists on discovering the truth behind the murder, admonishing Mace Windu's adherence to the rules. The Senator reveals that the Jedi died while accompanying him to contend with a group of rebels. The Senator and his security detail prepare to take the Jedi to the scene of the murder, but Mace pulls Dooku aside and tells him something is up. Deception is afoot. When they arrive on the scene, something is indeed off. The area is covered by blaster burns, and the Senator's story isn't adding up. Moreover, the Senator's ship has no blaster marks whatsoever. Dooku suspects the Senator and the security detail of the crime and ignites his lightsaber. The Senator yells that it was the guards who killed the missing Jedi and is shot in the back for his trouble. Assassin droids appear and a fight ensues. Everybody gets cut down quickly and only a few survivors are remaining once the dust settles. The last surviving trooper reveals that the Senator was their real target. Their intent was to force him to enact policies to save their world, as he had been corrupt and was selling off their planet bit by bit. The Jedi was seen as a law enforcer sent to protect the rich and Republic interests, and was killed by dissenters. Once in custody and in private, Dooku quietly agrees with the security captain, expressing his disgust with corruption, much to the surprise of the prisoner. After the funeral, it is revealed that Mace Windu has been appointed to the now vacant position of the fallen Jedi on the Jedi Council, as Dooku's actions against protocol resulted in the avoidable death of a senator. This episode builds on the foundation set in the previous episode. Dooku is constantly witness to corruption, and every action he takes is somehow undermined or thwarted by the very people he serves. The Jedi are clearly tools for the rich and powerful, a fact that shackles their capacity to do actual good for the galaxy. Dooku's helplessness to effect change is now even more apparent, and his disillusionment with the Jedi way has taken root. It seems like Dooku is just one straw away from breaking. Another time skip, and we open on Dooku traversing the halls of the Jedi Archive. He moves to a particular archive, the archive of the planet Kamino, entered by Sifo Dyas. He deletes the archive, then speaks to Jocasta Nu, connecting the dots on why Kamino did not exist in the archives.
Are you having a problem, Master Kenobi?
Yes, I'm looking for a planetary system called Kamino. It doesn't show up in the archive charts.
Apparently, there's some talk about Qui-Gon Jinn, who is reported finding a Sith on Tatooine. And woo, look at Clone Wars style Qui-Gon, holy crap. He looks pretty good to be honest, and the voice actor is killing it with his Liam Neeson impression. Anyway, as in Phantom Menace, the Jedi Council does not quite buy this whole Sith returning story, and does nothing about it. We have Master Yaddle here, who speaks for the Council in this conversation, which is an interesting choice. After the title sequence, we time jump again to the end of the Phantom Menace movie. Qui-Gon has been killed by Darth Maul, leaving Dooku to reflect. Dooku plainly holds the Jedi Council responsible for the death of his friend and former Padawan, though he does not state it outright. As Dooku leaves, Yaddle follows him in secret, seemingly worried about how Dooku is handling his grief. We arrive in a location that harkens back to Dooku's hangar from the movies, and we see him speaking with Sheev, expressing his discontent that Qui-Gon has been killed. They exchange a back and forth that reveals that Dooku has been working in secret with the Dark Lord for some time now. Yaddle steps out of the shadows and confronts Dooku, bringing us to the defining moment for Dooku, the moment he must choose which path to commit himself to. He's hesitant for a moment, but his resolve takes shape, and he steps up to fight. Yaddle and Dooku duel in a battle that is reminiscent of his fight with Yoda in the future. Yaddle admits the failures of the Council and takes responsibility for the death of Qui-Gon, but Dooku has heard enough already. Yaddle goes for the escape, but Dooku drops the door on her, stealing his fate and his loyalty to Sheev. Yaddle pushes the door back up with the Force, but then collapses to the ground, only for Dooku to prove himself as a Darksider by striking down his helpless opponent, claiming to desire nothing more than peace and order. The episode ends on Sheev's delighted face as the score goes dark. This episode was emotional and impactful. Most importantly, it recontextualizes the events of one of the weakest bad guy characters and one of the weakest movies in one blow. On one hand, Qui-Gon's death now carries much more weight than originally. It was already a transforming moment for Obi-Wan, but it was a version of Obi-Wan that we already knew was going to transform. On the other hand, Dooku's transformation and position suddenly makes much more sense. His once unclear motivations in the films and in Clone Wars are now much easier to understand. This once underwritten character has elevated from a forgotten villain to an important cog in the Star Wars saga. I'll never look at Count Dooku the same way again after this. To know that under all this smugness and hatred was a root in pain and grief, that he is doing something he truly believes in and isn't just a mustache-twirling villain in a cape, although I do like that aspect of him. It's not often that a Star Wars property has me turn around this much on a character. This episode makes me want more of a character that I was previously disinterested in, and Star Wars as a whole is enriched for the effort. While this closes out Dooku's story, Ahsoka still has some gaps to fill. Time jump. Anakin arrives late to witness young Ahsoka's training. Obi-Wan sounds very off here. Not sure what's up with the voice, but his whispering so they can kind of get away with it. Ahsoka's training is designed specifically to simulate battle droids, but Anakin is extremely unimpressed, much to Ahsoka's dismay. Ahsoka confronts Anakin about his disapproval with her performance, but the issue is truly that he thinks the test is too easy and offers to formulate a real test for her. It's clear that he doesn't want Ahsoka to be just a good warrior, but to be truly great. Then, it becomes pretty clear pretty quickly what this test is going to entail, as Captain Rex and the Clone Bros surround Ahsoka with their blasters set to stun. The test begins, and she barely manages to block 2 or 3 attacks before taking a direct hit, one that would likely have proven fatal in a combat situation. Once she comes around, she's woozy, but set back to the test immediately. She fares about the same the second time, but giving up is not an option. Failure upon failure, Anakin's brutal training regime continues, and he merely complements her ability to recover from the shock. Anakin makes his intentions absolutely clear, wanting only the best for Ahsoka. Deep down, he doesn't want to lose another person he cares about. Ahsoka shows improvement over time, and we time skip again suddenly. Many years later, she is now able to last at least 5 minutes against the clone troopers. Still, Jedi are vulnerable to betrayal, and Captain Rex blasts her down. One more time skip, and the mood is different. Rex holds a gun to Ahsoka's back, remarking his hope that her training has paid off, and the two walk into a horde of troops aiming down the rifles at Ahsoka, their helmets painted orange. Once in honor of Ahsoka, now as enemies. With Order 66 in place, they seek the death of all Jedi. This was a chilling episode. It was not strictly necessary to explain how Ahsoka survives the betrayal of Order 66, as the Clone Wars series does cover those events eventually. But to know that Anakin pushing her so hard was the deciding factor in her eventual survival was a welcome glimpse into her growth. This is the shortest episode by far, yet has the most time jumps of any episode, and still, the point came home fairly clearly. Ahsoka is a cut above the rest, and the stubbornly brutal mentorship of her master led to the great skill we see from her later in her life. Of course, the Clone Wars and years leading to Order 66 are only the beginning of Ahsoka's story. The final tale opens up on the funeral of Padme, in line with the final scenes of Revenge of the Sith. Bail Organa spots Ahsoka paying respects to her friend one last time, heartbroken at all the horrors she's witnessed leading to this moment. With the Jedi now wanted and hunted, Bail attempts to offer assistance to Ahsoka, but she is tired and refuses. Bail is accosted by troopers, and Ahsoka hides on the roof, giving Bail a chance to speak loudly and offer Ahsoka his final words of support, much to the confusion of the troopers. Ahsoka meets up with Captain Rex, one of the few clones to resist the mind control of Order 66, and the two take off to go into hiding. Time jumps again several more years, and Ahsoka is working in secret on a farmstead under an alias, adapting to a new life. When tragedy strikes an innocent farmer, Ahsoka commits the classic Jedi blunder by revealing her powers to save a life. Although the innocent is grateful, witnesses take note. Later, Ahsoka is invited to sit with the farmers for lunch, as the farmers variously reveal their thoughts on the Empire. Specifically, how the citizens of the galaxy initially welcomed the Empire, and many turned a blind eye to the evils, while others simply suffer in silence. The woman Ahsoka saved confronts Ahsoka about being a Jedi, but Ahsoka plays it off. The brother of the woman she rescued has other plans, however. Ahsoka and the woman take off the next day to trade their stock, but upon their return, the farming village is in flames. The brother reported Ahsoka to the Empire, and of course, they came looking. The remaining survivors face a Sith Inquisitor, and this is a cool design for an Inquisitor that I do not recognize. He takes the swing to execute the brother when Ahsoka steps up to the bat. Ahsoka and the Inquisitor face off, and it's clear that Ahsoka has no lightsaber with which to duel. The Inquisitor goes in for the kill, and Ahsoka turns the tables on him and cuts him down expertly with his own lightsaber. Faced with regret, the survivors have nothing left, so Ahsoka calls in her favor with Bail Organa to rescue the farmers. In this final moment, Ahsoka makes the decision to leave hiding and enter the fray. It's time to fight the Empire. This episode is basically a quick and dirty retelling of the novel Ahsoka, with a few changes here and there. Seeing Ahsoka at a new peak in skill and resolve is amazing. Taking down a fearsome Sith Inquisitor without a lightsaber, and effectively in one motion, illustrated that she has not let being in hiding slow her down one bit.
Age hasn't slowed you down one bit.
Fabulous way to end this miniseries. What a great show. This whole six-parter was so lovingly constructed and focus-built to fill in some gaps in the lore. The Dooku stuff was character-defying in a way I didn't think possible for an underwritten villain created more than 20 years ago. And there are a lot of episodes in Clone Wars and even tales that can be summed up in one sentence, but not the Dooku episodes. Each one is slow, emotional, and quiet. The nuance really sells his transformation to a tragic villain. Additionally, the series clearly elevates Ahsoka from the young Jedi prodigy in Clone Wars to the expert warrior we see in her prime in later shows such as Rebels and the upcoming Ahsoka show, presumably. The fact that by the end of the Clone Wars series, Ahsoka was only just getting to that level is impressive enough on its own. She wasn't even in her final form. The first episode with Baby Ahsoka was much less impactful than the other 5 episodes. However, I think that using a simple story like that to set the tone and pace of the upcoming episodes was very important, so it served that role well. It would be easy to overlook that episode, but I think that if you open up right away on the Dooku story, it wouldn't hit quite right, as you still may be expecting something a bit meatier, whereas the Baby Ahsoka story had already illustrated the episodes are going to be tight and focused, while also giving characters the time to feel their emotions and play out their internal conflicts. While I love this miniseries, it's a fairly minimal time investment. Frankly, I would love to see more stories told in this style, developing existing characters outside of the main shows, without giving them the long-out Book of Boba Fett or Kenobi series treatment. Nothing here was stretched out too long, nothing outstayed its welcome, therefore everything had the weight that it needed. As a prequel for Ahsoka, I'd say Rebels is probably more important viewing, and as an introduction to any of these characters, this miniseries does not work. It is clearly tailor-made to complement existing Star Wars stories without asking for the viewer to have a comprehensive knowledge or anything. If you've only seen the movies, these are all perfectly good. Even the Ahsoka stuff. Kinda makes it feel like she was there all along, really. It's kind of strange watching the films and Ahsoka not being around, but hey, that's a whole different topic. These are all on Disney Plus, and I strongly recommend each episode. Apparently, there are plans to do another set of Tales of the Jedi episodes in 2024, but you know how that goes. I'll believe it when I see it. I'm glad I was able to tackle this before the Ahsoka series comes out later this year, but if you're following the channel, there's still a ways to go on covering her full story. We'll get there, so stay tuned. I have a lot more content to cover between then and now. Until then, stay safe. I'm Ludin in the Dark, and you're awesome. Bye-bye!